from 0 to 6 figures on Etsy, from 6 figures to 7 figures, is a completely different ballgame, I would argue. Actually, my friend Stephen Chin, who I had on my TDSM podcast, actually said this to me once, and I'm like, that actually makes a lot of sense, or at least it was true to me, that you can easily, as a solopreneur, go from 0 to 6 figures a year in your Etsy shop. But going from 6 figures a year to the later 6 figures a year, or even the 7-figure or multiple 7-figure a year mark, your business at that point becomes a whole different game. Assuming that everybody watching this video wants to get into the 7-figure or later 6-figure a year mark with your Etsy shop, what did that look like? What were the changes happening within my business that I had to adopt to and be malleable enough to then change systems and then grow my business further? Hopefully by the end of this video, you can take away, what the core fundamentals are of a 7-figure store. Basically, how's this video gonna go down? I'm going to explain to you all the parts of a Etsy business engine, followed by asking you a series of questions. And these questions are, I guess they're kind of rhetorical. What's a rhetorical question? Basically, I'm gonna ask you some questions, and through asking yourself these questions, you hopefully, like I said, will be able to identify maybe some weak spots within your business model currently that need to either get perfected or changed, or just parts of your business that needs to get eliminated altogether. After I ask you these questions, I'm basically going to explain my use case, or how I personally was able to systemize each part of my personal Etsy business engine. It's likely that we're not selling the same things, but even with that being said, the core fundamentals of the business model on Etsy really remains the same. This is gonna be a good video, guys, so you're gonna wanna stay until the end. And I just wanna say thank you so much for following me and watching my videos. There's so much gratitude that I'm still here, and I get so much love, and it really keeps me going. It makes me feel like I'm doing something, I'm making a difference and actually helping people, and that's just what it's all about. Entrepreneurship can be pretty lonely at times, especially in the beginning when you're the only one doing it, nobody understands, and you're just kind of walking into the unknown. So hopefully these videos, make you feel a little bit better about taking those steps. All right, guys, let's get into the video. Welcome back, guys. My name is Hannah Gardner. If you are new to the channel, I'm teaching people how to build brands on Etsy and Shopify. I am a 7-figure seller, both on Etsy and Shopify. I have been documenting my e-commerce journey here on YouTube for quite a few years now, and sharing back all of the things that I've learned along the way. And yes, that includes my losses. I also recently started a podcast called the Till Death Stop Me podcast, where I'm interviewing a bunch of awesome serial e-commerce entrepreneurs that have done way bigger things than me. So if you want to get inspired, that is the podcast you're going to want to subscribe to. We're on YouTube as well as Spotify and also Apple Podcasts. First of all, what is a scalable Etsy business? A scalable Etsy shop is a business that can run effectively and efficiently without you. It can handle a huge influx of orders at any given time, and it can handle the amount of traffic and still give good customer service and a good quality product. Now, if you're really in your early stages, you might be asking, well, how can my business run without me? And contingent on the type of CEO that you are, you may never want your business to run without you, and that's totally fine. But our goals as CEOs and as entrepreneurs is, we have a unique opportunity to build a business engine that runs so efficiently that we can either remove ourselves, or we get to decide what part of our business we actually will only want to focus on and only work in that thing. When you think about an Etsy business engine, I will put up an engine wheel here. If this engine wheel resembles your business, right? You have a bunch of different departments or components of what makes your business work. So let's just name them off. On one part of this, you have customer service, you have fulfillment of your orders, so packaging and shipping out your orders. Obviously, if you do print on demand or you sell digital downloads, you don't actually have fulfillment because it gets done for you. But if you're like me and you sell physical goods where you're designing and shipping everything right here from your office, right? You actually have to do fulfillment for yourself. yourself. Another part of this engine is inventory management. So if you're holding physical inventory in your office, there is actually a proper way to do this. There's an efficient way and a non-efficient way to do this. Obviously, again, if you're selling POD, if you're selling digital assets, you actually don't have inventory issues for the most part. Then you have other departments like research and development, which is going out and finding product opportunities and then developing said products, then getting them prepared for, which is the next part of the wheel, which is listing optimization. So actually taking all the data and all the research and all the product development and turning that into product launches. Then you have your marketing department, which marketing technically could be separated into two avenues. You have strategic marketing and then you have creative marketing. Creative marketing is kind of like, you know, if you have an engineer versus an architect of a building, right? The architect goes in and makes everything pretty, right? So that's kind of like the creative marketing. It's your photography, it's your copywriting, it's graphics, if you have any graphics in your listings, it's your videos, right? It's your overall branding and creating your brand vibe. And then you have strategic marketing, which is how do you take all this pretty stuff and build a strategy to turn it into money. So that's things like Etsy pay-per-click, it's your value proposition strategy, it's your daily sales strategy, it's your free shipping versus non-free shipping strategy. All of those things, I guess you would call them strategic marketing, of how you're taking all your pretty efforts and making it turn into money. And then finally, arguably the last one is bookkeeping. So bookkeeping for your business, looking at creating a beautiful profit and loss statement, a P&L at the end of the month, and being able to analyze your business holistically from a bird's eye view based off of all the inflow and outflow of money that is happening within your business. So now that we understand what an Etsy business engine is, and at least we have a visual to probably a lot of the things that you just do on autopilot every day, and again, give or take, there might be a few more, parts of that engine for your particular model, right? I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm speaking based off my experience. Now that we have a visual there, right? If we're thinking in terms of setting up our business models to be scalable and repeatable, what we need to do is think of every single component of our business wheel in terms of systems and ask ourselves, how can we create systems on each wheel part that makes our processes scalable and repeatable? Now we're going to go through each engine wheel and I'm going to ask a series of questions, and hopefully these questions will help you identify if there's some gaps in your own business, followed by then me sharing what I do for my business, right? And even though it's likely that we're not selling the same thing, there is so much value that you can get just by hearing about what other people do and how they uniquely go about solving problems for their own business. I just came off a 7-day mastermind where I basically was trapped on a boat with 32 other entrepreneurs for 7 days. And I was actually probably one of the smallest sellers that was there, right? All of these people were well into the 8 figures a year mark, and actually one person was doing 9 figures a year. And most of them were selling actually on Amazon, and I don't even do Amazon, but just being in the room with those people and learning from those people was just so mind-blowing. There were so many breakthroughs that I had for my own business, so many things that I've learned just by hearing about the mistakes that they've made. So let's talk about the first part of the engine wheel here, which is customer service. In your customer service right now, if you were to walk away from customer service and never look at it again, would you have protocols or basically a SOP, standard operating procedure sheet, a manual per se, that you could then hand somebody to do your customer service for you? If the answer to that is no, that's totally fine. What I actually mean by this is, as you open your Etsy shops and you start doing your own customer service, after answering hundreds, if not thousands of your own customer service, you pretty much get a gist on every if then that scenario that happens within your conversations. And what you find is that oftentimes you get asked the same questions over and over again. And these questions are very valuable because it teaches you a lot about the needs, wants, fears, and goals of your own customers. It's actually data on what you can change or things that you can implement based off of the repeated questions people are asking or the concerns that they have. What I implore you to do is that in your Etsy messengers, you have a saved replies button to start saving your replies for pretty much all the standard questions that you get. Now, setting up these saved replies is one thing, but another part of this, and something that we did, is we actually basically created a document that is about 7 pages long. And in theory, I should be able to hand that document to somebody, and they, just based off that document, they basically would be able to take care of any if and that scenario that happens. Now, obviously, you're not gonna hire an employee and just give them the document the day that you hire somebody, right? Like you're gonna actually train them as well. But it's important for you to be writing down your own processes. So extracting what is just in your head and actually putting it down on paper, because you want the same processes to be followed every single time. You don't want to, have a return and exchange policy one day and then on a whim change it to the next day, right? That's not a scalable and repeatable system for the day that you want to start onboarding employees and people to start helping you. This is also the same for fulfillment. So we actually have fulfillment workflows that look like charts like this, and it basically explains the processes from the getting the order to quality checking the product before it's packaged, to actually fulfilling the order, to how we buy the labels, to how we put the labels on the package, right? All the little moments of truth that you just do organically that you think is common sense, right? It's not common sense to somebody that's new in your organization. So you want to literally write out every single step as if you're teaching somebody to basically make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Pretend they never even knew what peanut butter or jelly was. Like, you literally have to be that detailed in these manuals or in these protocols that you're gonna basically set up for your business. Fulfillment is very similar to customer service. It's the same question. If you removed yourself from your fulfillment room today, would you be able to put somebody in your position to basically fulfill your orders? Now, if you're an Etsy shop that basically has a very complex fulfillment strategy because you have to do something super technical to get the finished product done, if you don't think that that is repeatable, then it's not a scalable product. And I actually would recommend that you stray away from anything that's not scalable. And again, this is if you're the seller that is wanting to get into the later 6-figure or 7-figure mark. If you don't have products that you can push out at scale, or if the lead time is very, very long, and if your lead time actually increases with the more orders that you get, it's very, very hard to scale a business like this. So I would actually stray away from launching more products in that direction and possibly go a different direction, or figure out ways to actually build scalable products that you can fulfill in a timely manner. This leads us to the third thing, which is inventory management. Inventory management, like I said, is only if you're holding physical product goods. The question here is, do you use a SKU system? The first question here is, do you use a SKU system? It's almost impossible to track your inventory without a SKU system on Etsy. And a SKU system, if you don't know what SKUs are, SKUs stand for stock keeping unit, and it's a unique identification code that you give your products when you set up your listings, The issue with tracking your inventory properly on Etsy is that on Etsy, you actually have the ability to duplicate a listing. And not only do you have the opportunity to duplicate a listing, but you technically could sell one SKU or one product type in 10 other listings. So how are you then tracking your inventory if a product sells in one listing, but the same product also exists in a different listing? One, you need SKU systems to be able to do this if you're gonna try to do it manually, or two, you need some sort of software to track your inventory, multi-listing, moreover, even multi-channel if you're selling on Etsy and Shopify. The only software that I've found that tracks your inventory multi-channel, multi-listing, and if you're bundling items is with tools like SumTracker. They're gonna not only bundle your items together, but it will track your inventory multi-channel and multi-listing. And the improper way, which I learned the hard way doing this is one of my mistakes that we're unleashing here, is imagine I had a store with over 600 SKUs, but I actually didn't have SKUs, which then means I had no way to actually track my inventory. And so what does that mean? That means that the way that I was managing my inventory was simply by going to my shelf and seeing what we were getting low on and what we had to make more of. That is a very inefficient way to run a business. Everything with your inventory management and your operations should be data driven. You should be able to log into a database and see, okay, SKU 1, 2, 3, 4 is down to 2 pieces. We need to make more and replenish the inventory. And surprisingly, I've seen businesses that are well over 7 figures still running their inventory management system this way, but unfortunately, it's really inefficient. And it's actually more costly when you're making inventory just based off of a whim instead of actually putting data behind what you're actually selling the most of. The next part of your business engine is your research and development. And the question you can ask yourself here is, what is the system or the recurring steps that you follow when it comes to deciding what products you are going to launch first, second, third? If you are like how I was, in the beginning, I basically just launched things on a whim. I just launched things that I personally thought would sell. And that started the momentum, but on a high level, that's not the most efficient spend of your time or money. Another question that you can ask yourself here is, are you making database decisions on what to invest your time and money in, right? Because development of new products costs time and money. Or are you just like I was, just doing it on a whim? And so what I mean by this is looking for product opportunities based off what people are actually searching in the Etsy search bar, followed by looking for product opportunities that have a proven track record of generating a decent amount of sales. Our system now that we actually do research and development is by basically using tools like Sales Samurai, and we can really track, for the product opportunities that we're interested in, what product opportunities we should actually prioritize. In tools like Sales Samurai, I can type in any keyword. So if I'm looking to sell a dog collar, right, I can go in and sort by which listings are getting the most exposure in the shortest amount of time, because obviously the listings that are getting a lot of exposure from Etsy, or they're getting exposure for something. Etsy likes the listing for something. And especially if the listing is young, we can assume that if we click on that listing and they also have, things like a 20 add to carts badge or a bestsellers badge, that Etsy is favoring that listing for something and that it's for that product opportunity. It's probably doing pretty decent, right? We can prioritize that listing over, say, a listing that has no add to carts or not getting a bunch of exposure from Etsy. Putting data behind our decisions with tools like Sales Samurai, which I highly recommend you check them out. There's gonna be a link in the description for them. Different tools may give you different results back, but what these tools do is that they do show you who's at the top for certain keywords. So Sales Samurai is going to show me, if I type in the word gold necklace, which listing is historically getting the most exposure for that keyword, and what value propositions and what type of marketing and photos and stuff that you need to compete with. We don't want to overlook the step of still defining all these little moments of truth of the things that we do when it comes to getting new products to launch. And this is the same for listing optimization. So taking all of that data that we've collected from research and development and Sales Samurai and putting that into our actual listing creation. So using those keywords that we found, pulling out all the KPIs on the type of photos that we're gonna need to compete with, the price point that we're gonna have to compete with, right? All of these different things. And we're gonna wanna build that same workflow for somebody that is gonna do our listing optimization as well. Now let's get into the next part of the business engine, which is marketing. And like I mentioned before, we have strategic marketing, and then we also have creative marketing. And the first question that I need to ask you here is, do you have your Etsy PPC maxed out to $1,000 a day spending? Now, I have way more in-depth videos on my PPC strategy, and I'm not gonna go into all of that in this video. If you wanna check that out, you can check out that full video on the psychology of why getting to the max budget allowance of $1,000 a day is so important on Etsy. But the moral of the story here is, when you ask yourself that question, if the answer is no, then you haven't even hit your max potential on just the marketing side alone. That's not even including all the other things that you could be doing to your store, right? If the answer to that is yes, and you actually have your Etsy PPC maxed out, right? On Etsy, what you have to understand is, once you have your Etsy PPC maxed out, there's really no other way to make more money other than just launching more things. So Etsy is a very horizontal scaling business, right? It's not like you can put an infinite Etsy ad budget and then it will spend the money. It actually won't spend the money. When you have your ads budget maxed out, like I said, the only other way to make more money is by launching more things, right? And that is why it's so important to get your Etsy business engine, getting it to the point where it could could possibly run by itself, but also grow by itself. And the only way to grow it by yourself is having a really, really strong research and development department or processes where you can be consistently launching more products over time. And this is something that should never stop, right? Research and development and launching more products is something that should be built into the engine to be doing and happening on a weekly, if not monthly basis, where you're constantly launching new listings and testing out more products, right? And so the point with that in the marketing world is, right, so the first thing that you have to ask is my budget set to $1,000 a day? If it's not, your first goal is to get to the max budget allowance of $1,000 a day spending, but not just putting it to the max and wasting money, right? Obviously, you need to have an optimized store with competitive products, but also set to the max with it actually turning a profit. Again, you can check out the whole video in my channel on that strategy. On the creative marketing side of things, what do we have? We have your imagery, your videos, you have your copywriting. While in my existing brands, I still am doing the research and development myself as far as what new products we're going after. One thing that I have been able to offload is actually the videography and photos. We, in our studio, actually right behind this camera, we have SOP'd out every single process of videography and photography, where I've taken all the variables out of photo shoots. Basically, when my employee goes to do the product photo shoot, it has the camera's already set to the right settings, the lights are already in place, right? And he already knows what angles to shoot at, how far away to shoot the product from, what the video is supposed to look like. And so now every single time we do a product photo shoot, the images come back with consistency, but still maintaining a good level of creativity, and it looks good with the finished product. So this is what I'm talking about, is identifying in parts of your business of things that you can SOP out, make standard operating procedures for, so then you can offload to somebody else. And photography for me was very, very it is time consuming. You could spend all day doing photo shoots if you wanted to, especially when you have a consistent inflow of new products. And finally, bookkeeping. And the question that you need to ask yourself here, which is super important, is are you doing your books on a cash basis or an accrual basis? Now, if you don't know what those are, I will explain them very fast. The improper way to be doing your books as a e-commerce entrepreneur selling goods is a cash basis. Cash-based accounting means that Hannah Gardner made $100,000 that month in revenue, but Hannah spent maybe $120,000 in employee wages, in inventory. So maybe, 50,000 of that was material cost because I'm buying a bunch of materials because Christmas is coming up. Maybe I spent it on office rent, on ads, all of these different things. Made 100,000, but that month I spent 120,000. That doesn't mean then that month was a negative $20,000 month, right? That's an incorrect way to be analyzing your business holistically as a whole. The correct way to be running your books and looking at your bookkeeping is something called accrual-based accounting, meaning that all that inventory I bought doesn't actually get expensed until it sells. So all the materials that we bought are actually assets, and they don't get expensed until they sell. In the financial world, this line item is something called cost of goods sold. So what does that mean? In the profit and loss statement, there's a line called cost of goods sold, and that is exactly what it says: the cost of the good that's sold. So we're only expensing the item when it sells. Say I sold 10 of these cards for $10, right? And my revenue was $100 that month, but the cards themselves cost $5 to make. That means that for that month, my cost of goods sold was $50. But if I had spent $500 in that same month buying the materials for these cards, right, that doesn't mean that the cost of goods sold for that month was $500, right? You're only including what the cost of the good was that sold for that month. So it was actually only $50. This is gonna give you a more accurate view, a more holistic view on what your actual profit was correlated related to the sale of your items. And this is what you need to see, because if your business is this pie chart here, right? All these expenses in your business, you have marketing costs, you have the cost of the products, you have your shipping costs, you have Etsy fees, right? And what's important for you is to see that line item that is net profit, right? And every month, from one month to the next month, we want to be optimizing all the other expense piece of the pies so that we can increase the most important piece of the pie, which is net profit. And you can't do that properly, one, if you're doing cash-based accounting, and two, if you don't have a SKU system. Like I mentioned before, SKUs are very important for tracking inventory if you're selling physical product goods, but SKUs are also really important for tracking your cost of goods sold. Your SKUs not only help you identify your products, but it also allows you to correlate the unique identification code with a cost of goods sold. I would look back at my early days and the numbers that I was doing then, and I can almost guarantee that if I had these systems in place earlier on, my $100,000 months would have been $300,000 months if I was just running a proper business engine. But you don't know what you don't know until you start. And you know, I learned all of these things along the way, especially when it came to hiring and firing employees. And I have another video in my channel that talks about when to hire, when to fire, when to know when to hire, when to know when to fire. I have all that in my channel as well. So make sure you check that out, guys. Overall, I hope you got some major value out of this video. I know it was a long training. If you stayed to the end, thank you so much again for always supporting my channel. Make sure you comment some love down below. That really means a lot to me, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.